We have some surprise for us, so I hand it over to him now. Thank you, Pawan Sai, Power
Thank
Sai.
thank you so much, sir, for a nice introduction. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, sir. I hope uh, it will be some worthy time to learn something. Here, we let us understand what is pivot table. As everyone rightly said, we are pivoting or transforming, reshaping something like data in order to make it useful. Right? It is an action which we do on the data in order to make it useful for our insights. And the thing is, pivot, it has the meaning like it is something which depend in turn depends on something else. So here the data is like whether the rows are dependent on columns or the columns are dependent on filters, whatever it is, each some entities are dependent on each other. So having said that, this is the basic idea of it. Let us move further. Normally, when we have a data set like this, could you please let me know if my screen is visible, please?
Yes, it is.
Okay, okay. Suppose that we
Yes.
have a data set like this, and if we keep on adding pivot tables, our file size might get increased because of the the updates we do or the changes we do. In order to uh, in order to tackle it, the default XLSX format of Excel, instead of saving it in XLSX format, you might consider saving it in XLSB format, which is in binary format. Okay, that could help you save the space and also help you handle the file easily. This is one important uh, tip I could say. Okay, the second thing is with respect to pivot tables, the major utility is you could bring the insights or you could do the analysis very quickly, as quick as possible. Why we need to do quick analysis? Because using the data set, if you keep on applying functions like count if, average if, sum if, it will take really lot of time. Okay, to make it possible, Excel has this feature called power pivot. Now let us understand, when we get such data set, what we need to do is we must make sure that the data is clean enough. Okay, once it is clean enough, we must also look for what are the necessary columns and what are unnecessary columns. Suppose that I'll remove few unnecessary columns here. Okay, I don't want this row ID, order ID, I don't want this ship date, I don't want this IDs. I can remove these columns. Okay, I don't want all of these because they are not useful for my analysis. Okay, I just select it, control minus. From 21 columns, my data has now reduced to 11 columns. Okay, very simple as that. You just clean the data, whatever it is required, only just keep those data. Even if you feel that there are some other cleaning is required, feel free to do so. Now we have lot many rows. Here you could see around there are 9,000 rows. Let us see how to utilize the pivot table. Okay, I'll just there are no other sheets. What I'll do, I'll go to insert, select on pivot table. Now we could see this pop up. The whole table range is selected. Okay, table or range. Now this is a range, it is not a table. You understand what is range and table, I hope. So this is a range, it is not in table. I'll discuss about range and table moving ahead. Here this total data is selected, and you could see whether I want a new worksheet or existing worksheet. For now I'll go with the new worksheet. I'll click OK. Now we have something called as this pivot table, where you would like to build a report choosing fields. You could select here, and these are pivot table fields based on which you will be working on. Okay, very simple, right? Now earlier this option was not appearing in the similar way. How we used to get is, I'll right click, you can go to pivot table options. In the display, if you check this classic pivot table layout, if I click OK, this was the classic layout which you used to get it. Okay, it is very clear enough, right? Drop the row fields here. What you can do is, suppose I want to see the data based on the segment, I can just drop it here. Now I have this rows in segment. Okay, here you can drop the report filters. Suppose I want to filter based on the Shape mode, I can just bring it and drop it here. Now it is a shape mode filter which is being acted. Here you have column fields. Suppose in column fields, I want to see something called as region. Okay, you select region and bring it into column fields. And suppose I want to view the value fields, I want to view the sales, I'll bring it into the value fields. Very simple, right? Basic pivot table is formed whatever you require. Okay, now just I'll undo everything. Okay, now instead of this classic layout, I have this layout. Let us do the same here. Okay, here I have something called as segment. If you don't find, you can search also. Okay, type segment, you'll get this, put it into rows. Okay, you can see the same. Now I want something called as region in columns. Just drag it to the columns. Now I want to filter based on the ship mode. You bring the filters here in on the top. You can see the filters. You can choose if you want multiple items. You can select this. Otherwise, if you want single item, you could select and click OK here. And we have something left which is sales. I'll bring this to values. Okay, this is a very simple pivot table where your aggregated values, sum of values are done. Here you could see the sum of sales, and here you could see the sum of sales heading also. Labels, if you click down here, you could see the 4 labels which are for columns. Here you could click on row labels and you can see the row labels. And this aggregation, you see how quickly it is done. If at all you would like to do this same thing in your data set, what you need to do is you need to apply multiple things like sum, if, average, if, whatever you want to do. Okay, before that, I hope you have understood the pivot table. What you need to understand is, moving ahead, suppose that my manager asked me, Pawan, okay, this is fine, but I want to use some slicer where I want to filter this. Okay, this ship mode is okay, but I don't want to use the filter in this way. I want something more user friendly. Then what I have another option. I'll remove this ship mode. I'll go to, once you click on this pivot table, you'll get these 2 options. Okay, something which is called pivot table analyze and something which is called design. If I click outside, you won't get those 2 options. Now you have this. If I click in the pivot table, you get this pivot table analyze option, and you just click on something called slicer. Okay, I have this pop-up window opening. What I'll do is, suppose I want the slicer based on the ship mode. I'll just select the ship mode. I'll click OK. Now you see this. I have got a good ship mode slicer where I can select it. The values will be changing. Okay, in order to understand more better, let us even remove regions. Okay, and just let us understand using these columns. Instead of subcategory, instead of segment, I'll bring subcategory. Okay, these are few subcategories. I hope it is visible properly and good way to even see it. If at all, see, now I have clicked outside, my pivot table is gone. If I click inside, your pivot table fields appear. By any chance, if at all close it and you want that to get it back, just click inside the pivot table, go to pivot table analyze. You see this fields list, you'll get it back. So don't worry. Here, if I select this ship mode, you could see that values are being updated, changed, and uh, applied on the similar way. Okay, here what you have to look is this slicer. If I want to select multiple things, click on this multi select. Okay, and then pressing control, you can select the multiple things on based on which you can you could see the values would be changing by if at all I deselect it. If you want to remove the slice filter, you can click on this clear filter. The filter will be cleared. You could even customize this slicer. You have this slicer option. You can put it in 2 columns. Okay, and you can customize the colors and do you can change however you want. You can do all the possible things, but for now we shall keep it like this. Now what we have to understand further is in this table, suppose that my manager asks me to, okay, Pawan, this is fine. I want to view a chart on this. Now this data, it is not clear for me which is higher or which is lower. I want a chart on it. Okay, what I'll do is I'll quickly select this pivot table. You have some, go to pivot table analyze. You see something called as pivot chart and recommended tables. If I click on pivot chart, it will show you the different types of charts. Whatever it is valid, you can select it. And if I click on recommended tables, if it is your older version, you may not, you may see it in different name or you may not see it. But in newer version, you could see this recommended pivot tables. Here, instead of this current label of subcategory, we can, select the region. Okay. And any other, by shape mode, it will suggest you things. For now, suppose I want to click on region, I can just click OK. Here your, pivot table will change to region thing. Very simple as that. Now I want a chart, as I told you, my manager wants to see a chart. I'll click on this pivot chart and I'll just choose a simple, column chart and just click OK. Now I have this bar chart. If I click on each shape mode, you could see that my data is being updated dynamically, right? Everything is interactive. I have a pivot table, I have a slicer, and I have a simple chart, right? Am I sounding clear so far?
Absolutely.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. Moving ahead, suppose that my manager asks me, Pawan, I don't want to see the only the region. I want to see countries as well. So what you could do is just select the pivot table, Control A, Control C. I'll just paste here. Okay, now this is my another pivot table which I have just copied. And if you want to see the field list, again I told you, just check on it. Okay, you'll get the field list. Now here I have this region. Instead of region, as I told you, I don't want region, I want something called as country. I'll bring country into rows. Okay, I have only one country. Okay, to make you understand better, I'll bring some other, let us bring category into picture. I'll bring this category. Okay, here we have region, here we have category. And my manager wants to, see the changes based upon the region, I could say. Okay, or any other, you could say, any other slicer. For now, I'll select this. I'll go to here, I'll select insert slicer. Okay, suppose that I'll select based upon the customer name. Okay, here I'll get long list of customer. It is okay, it is fine for me. I can just scroll down and select the name, not a problem. But what we shall see is here we have this pivot table slicer again. I'll bring a chart. Okay, very small pivot chart with these three columns. Okay, here I'll close it. Now see here, I have this first set of pivot chart which I have done, and this second set of pivot chart where I have just copied and changed the categories. Okay, I hope it is clear so far. But here you could see it is of both same colors. To make it distinct, what I could do is I could go to, so I can select the chart, go to design, change colors. Let us keep this brown color. Okay, or any color if you want. Now if I select customer name, you could see that only this data is being refreshed. Okay, so even any customer I select, only this particular chart is being updated, but this is not responding. And if I select ship mode, you could see that if I select ship mode, even this chart is responding. Okay, you could see that if I select ship mode, even this my second chart, second slicer, everything is responding. The reason is we have copied the data from this table, and I mean this pivot table, and we have pasted it here. So by default, one side communication will be turned on. To understand that, what we have to do is just select the slicer, right click. There will be something called report connections. If your Excel version is 2013 or earlier, you might see something called pivot table connections or any other name. But new version in 16 or later, you could see this report connection. Just select it. Here you could see that my pivot table 5 and pivot table 7 both are checked on. So using this slicer, I can make the impact on both the charts. Now let us select this slicer. I'll right click and click on report connections. Here you could see that my pivot table 5, it is unchecked. To make it interactive, I'll check this. I'll click OK. Now you could see that if I select this, everything is changing dynamically. Even if I select this, everything will change dynamically, right? So in a very brief way, you could understand that I could make a interactive dashboard like this. Of course, there is formatting and charts and everything. There are many things to be done, but to a brief understanding of pivot tables, I hope you could understand this report connection, right?
For Imbal's
Is my
internet
screen
issue, I
visible?
think.
Okay, is my screen visible?
Yes,
Yeah, it's visible.
Yes.
Okay, now what I'll do is, yes. Now what I'll do is I have cleared all the filters. I'll resume from where I have left. Okay, I hope you have understood about the connections. Since, if you just right click, just click on the report connections, make sure that in order to make it interactive enough, check all the pivot tables that you are connected to. I hope so far, this is understandable. Let us, get into another sheet and let us do some basic understanding of pivot table. Here I'll just type topic and some values. Okay, topic is like A, B, C, D, E, F, or else A, B, C, D, E. Our values is like 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. Suppose that I want to make this as pivot table. I'll go to insert, create pivot table, selected. I'll click on the existing sheet. I'll just select this cell. I'll click OK. Now I have got the pivot table here. I'll just bring the topic to rows, values to values. So this is the pivot table where we can see the data. Now imagine that your data is updated. Okay, they have changed the modified the values. Instead of A, now it is F, G, H, I, and J. Okay. Now if I click here, right click and click on refresh, you see the data is updated. Okay, this is how, if at all you have the data, existing data, and if you want to update, you just right click and refresh. Okay, then the data will be updated. But there is one important thing to remember. What will happen is if you click on this drop down, can you see this A, B, C, D, E also appearing where I don't have those values anymore? Okay, to you know to stop it saving the previous retained data, you have to what you have to do is just click on this pivot table, go to pivot table analyze, click on something called field settings. Okay, not field settings. Do one thing, right click, open pivot table options. Okay, these are the pivot table options which you have. Go to display. There is okay. Go to data. There is something called number of items to retain per field. It will, if it is automatic, then it will retain the data. Make it to none. Click OK. And if you again right click, refresh. Okay, now you could see that only the new data is updated. It won't retain the previous data. Okay, is this understandable? Anyone?
Yes.
I'm
Yes,
sorry,
yes.
Pawan, I
Yes.
lost my connection. I'm back. But I'm happy with the information that I got from the data.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
I took over and just started from where I left.
Great,
I
great.
have, okay, sir. Now,
Arun sir, even I had a low internet as of like environment. It's not
Yes.
doing good now today, so it's raining. So hand out to
Oh,
Ponce. Thank you.
thank you.
thank you, Sachin. Let us move ahead. As I have mentioned, in order to retain, in order to not retain the previous data, what we do is we'll go to pivot table options, go to data, and check this, make this change of number of items retained per field to none. Okay, select OK, and if you select the drop down, the recent information only will be updated instead of retaining the previous data. Okay, now let us take some sample data from here. What we shall do is I'll take this very small data. I'll go to a new sheet. I'll paste it here, and let us make a quick pivot table. Again, I'll just select the table range. Existing sheet I want to make, I'll just click here. I'll click OK. If I scroll to the right, you could see I can make my pivot table here. What I'll do is I want segment into rows and the sales into values. I have this consumer and corporate values. Okay, we have these two segments. Imagine uh, if at all my data gets updated. Okay, tomorrow new data comes in. Suppose that I want to put the new data. I'll press Control D. Instead of consumer, I'll write something called as home. I'll write again here home. Now this home data must be updated. If I just right click and refresh, it won't be updated. Okay, the reason the sales might get updated, but the consumer corporate, this home will not be updated. What you need to do is go to click on pivot table analyze, change data source, click on change data source. Now you could see that I have to extend this. Okay, you can just select on it, select the entire data you want, just hit enter and click OK. Now you could see that my home data is also appearing directly. Okay, but try to understand, I can't go and update manually each and every day. So there is one tip for it, that now this table is in a range format. If at all you want to make, if at all you could change it to table, it is it will update the rows automatically. So you just click anywhere in the table, select Control T, it will create a table. My table has headers, I'll click OK. Now the data is changed to a table. Now suppose that a new two rows comes up tomorrow. Okay, I'll just copy this two rows. Instead of home, I'll write something called as office, and I'll write office. You can just click over here, right click and refresh. You see the office data appearing, right? The total will be same because I copy pasted the values. You can change the values here, not a problem. I can just again click and refresh. The data is updated. Like, is this point clear, where if at all if at all I have range, the new data can't be updated. If I have table, it will pick the new rows which comes up in future, right? Can anyone confirm, please?
Pawan, I have a question.
Yes, yes.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Pawan, the question is that like I saw you converted into a table and then you added it. So if you don't like convert it into a table and you just add it and just change the range, so wouldn't that work and then refresh the pivot? Like wouldn't that work as well?
No, it would not work. What you have to do is, as I told you, suppose that I'll do undo it. Okay, I'll undo it. I won't make it table. Now it is a range. Suppose that again I'll add one more row. Okay, I'll add one more row here. Instead of home, what I'll do is I'll write something as party or something. Okay, now what I have to do is, if I
Yes, Pawan.
right click, even if I right click and refresh, it won't update. What you have to do is you have to click on pivot table analyze, go to change data source, click on change data source. You see this, my new row is left out. Now what you have to do, you have to select the whole data again, including that new source, hit enter, click OK, and then the data would be appearing, right? This problem could be solved by converting this range to table. Did I answer your question?
So you're basically saying that if the entire data set is a table, then if we keep adding data, the pivot table will automatically like refresh the data. Like it will be able to pick up the data without us specifying the source.
Yes, yes. Otherwise, if it is not a table, you need to change the data source multiple times whenever you update manually.
Got it.
Pawan, can I just say something?
Yes, please.
Yeah, actually, what if we change the range from the whole columns, like from A to L? If we select the whole columns, then we won't have the issue of like missing out on data, and also we don't have to convert it to table. Is that right?
Okay, let us do that and see. You mean to tell that instead of mentioning the source directly, I'll go to pivot table, change the source. You mean to
Uh-huh.
mention that instead of specifying this, what if I can just
Uh-huh.
specify the columns? Is
Yes,
it?
right. Yeah.
Okay, we can do that, but there will be some performance impact, I believe. You can see this blank row will appear. Okay,
Okay,
because it
okay,
has
right.
blank rows. If at all someone mistakenly enters some data here, 5,000. Okay, you see, I'll just click here, right click, refresh. You see 5,000 will appear.
Right, okay, got it, got
So
it.
there is the way, for learning purpose, you can do that. Otherwise, it is better to restrict the rows. And also the space would be occupied, right? I have mentioned that pivot table actions, whatever you do, like the memory space and performance, these things should be optimized. Okay,
Yeah,
for quick
yeah,
okay,
got it.
for smaller tables, it is not a problem. If at all you are dealing with lakhs, millions of rows, sorry, thousands of rows, it will be a problem. Okay, moving ahead, we shall discuss few more things. I'll click on a new sheet. Okay, I'll just again make another pivot table quickly. I have this new worksheet. Okay, let us understand. I'll bring this order date to rows. Okay, and I'll bring some sales data to values. Here you could see that there are plus buttons. If you click that, it will show till quarter, month, and dates. If at all you see previous editions or any other editions, if I right click, you can see something called ungroup. If I ungroup it, by default, many times you might see this order. In Excel, we have this feature where it groups the respective parts of date based upon the quarter, month, year, or the other entities, where you could aggregate accordingly, right? Add mention this sales accordingly. Now imagine I want to regroup it. What you can do is you can right click, group it. It will ask me what is the starting date, ending date. You can give the start and ending date. Suppose I want only month and year, I can click on month and year, select OK. You see my month and year is appearing. Now there are multiple years. I want to close it. Don't worry, right click, expand, collapse entire field. It will collapse entire field. Now what if at all you don't like these buttons, you uncheck these buttons on the top right. It will be gone. Okay. Now suppose that you ask me, Pavan, we ungrouped it. Now and try imagine I want a weekly analysis. We can do it. What we need to do is just group it again. Here you have something called days. Click on that. Okay. And instead of mentioning 1 day, mention 7 days. Just click OK. Here you'll get that week and the sales. This is a weekly sales which you have. Okay. Let us get back. Okay. Now these are the years. Okay. And I'll just expand it. Expand entire field. We have years and months. Now let us do some learn some calculations or formatting and other things. What we shall do is, here you could see on the top there is something called design. Okay, now to make it little more understandable, what I'll do is I'll bring this order date here. Okay, I'll remove this months. I'll remove this order date. We have years. Okay, in the rows, what I'll do is I'll bring here. I'll just remove field of years. Okay. Remember that order date you can use only once, either in rows or columns. If at all I'll do one thing. I'll bring this into months into columns, and I'll bring something else like segment into rows. Now I have this simple data into multiple rows. If you need to change it, okay, to make you understand better, what I'll do is I'll bring it. I'll just remove this months and order date. I'm keeping it very simple. Okay. This segments and years I have very good fit and fine. I'll just move ahead and bring this category to my rows. Now you see this, I have something called consumer and the three categories where I have, okay, so based on the segment, and we have the categories, and we have the subtotals and all the grand totals and all this information. In the design tab, you can customize all these things whichever way you want. You can click on subtotals. You can click on do not show subtotals. It will disappear. You can click on show all subtotals. You could see that in the bottom it will appear. You could change the design format. Okay, if you don't like anything, you can try other multiple formats where it suits you. Okay, and what you can do, you can turn off the grand totals for rows and columns. You can you know on for rows and columns. If you want on for only rows, you can only on for rows. You can explore these four options and subtotals as well. Suppose I want to change the layout. Okay, here I am able to see this consumer in the sideways. Now I want to show it in different form. Now this is my compact form. This is my outline form where it is separated. You could see here, right? And this would be my tabular form where it has little enlarged and showing the subtotals. If you want to repeat all item labels, it will repeat this consumer. You could see that, right? It is repeating. If you don't want to repeat, click on do not repeat. If you want to insert blank row after each item, insert blank row, it will insert blank rows. If you remove that, it will remove. Row headers, if I remove row headers, you see this row headers, it has stopped highlighting. Column headers, you see column headers, it has stopped highlighting. Banded rows, you see banded rows is something where it will, since I have selected the different version, it will show that. Now you see this version. Banded rows, if I check, it will show the alternate rows highlighted. Banded columns is alternate columns are highlighted. Okay, you can choose multiple designs. If you don't like any of these designs, go to new pivot table style. You can format it with respect to every entity. Click on format. You format the font, border, fill. You can include many things here. Even if you click on fill effects, you can see the gradients you want. Okay, and even if you have hex colors, what you can do is go to custom. You can paste your hex codes over here. You can format it. Just if you want to set it as default, you can check this and say click OK, where it will be a default format for you. For now, I'll just select any common format. And okay, let us move further and understand few options which are very important, where I could deal with the multiple options of pivot table. Okay, here in pivot table analyze, we have something called insert timeline. When you click on insert timeline, it will show the option of order date only if order date is present. Okay, otherwise it won't pick the other columns. Only if it is in date format, it will pick the respective dates. You can select this order date. Okay, here you could see that I have all the data selected. You can choose either months or quarters or years. I'll select years. I can see only 2016 data here. 15, 14. If I want to till 2016, I can extend. If I want respective months, I can just select it till when to when I want. I can select those months. I can filter out the respective data for it. This is a very good feature where Excel helps us to quickly choose the timeline and see it immediately. Right? It is a very handy feature. Moving ahead, let us remove the slicer and let us understand few options here. Now here what we have is we have this empty rows. Suppose I right click and go to table options, you have something called merge and center cells with labels. Okay, if I click on that, click OK, can you see this? My cells has merged and it is centered, right? It is now made into center. I can go to pivot table options again, uncheck this to remove that. This display fields in report area, I'll try to explain. Imagine this is the pivot table analyze, right? Just click on field list. Let us bring multiple filter criteria. Let us bring ship mode, customer name, region, state. Let us bring all these. There are 3. Let us bring one more. Let us bring subcategory. Okay, we have multiple filters, but for choosing it, it will be a little troublesome thing, right? So what we have to do is again go back to pivot table options. Okay, select this default display fields as over then down, and report filter fields per row. Suppose I choose 2 fields per row. I'll just click OK. Now you see these fields are distributed into 2 columns where it has two rows applied for fields, right? You have to understand that and practice it. Moving ahead, again I'll go back to the pivot table options. Let us understand. Okay, suppose there are any error values. What I'll do is I'll go to the data, or suppose imagine there is some error. Okay, now I'll just, we can't change this pivot table, of course. I'll go to this sales data. Here what I'll do is I'll just do something called 1 divided by 0. It will throw me an error, right? I'll copy paste it some like in multiple places to create some errors. Let us go back to our pivoted sheet. I can right click, refresh. Now you see multiple errors, right? Now I don't want to show all these errors. What I want is I want to show 0 instead of errors. What I could do is go to pivot table options, click on error values. For error values, show 0. If there are empty values, I can show this dash. I can just click OK. Now you see this, instead of errors, I can see the zeros, right? Is this clear so far? Can anyone tell me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Moving ahead, we shall see something called as auto fit width for it. Suppose I'll go to the order sheet. Instead of consumer, I'll tell that consumer is best for this quarter. Okay, I'm just separating out one particular row of data. I'll just go to the same sheet again. Okay, which sheet? Here in the same sheet, I'll right click, refresh. Okay, here you could see that consumer is best is appearing. This is not being auto fit width because I'll go to pivot table options. You can see that. Okay, I mean, okay, this is being auto fit. Here you could see the auto fit column widths on update. If I uncheck that, it won't fit to the actual width actually. Okay, that is where it should work. Here if I just double click it, it will auto fit. Okay, here you could see that. Okay, I need to uncheck this. I'll now what I'll do, I'll uncheck this, click OK. I'll go back to the order sheet. Now instead of this thing, I'll just write consumer 1. Okay, I'll hit enter. I'll go back to the same sheet. I'll right click and refresh. Now you see the name has changed, but the width, the total width which it is occupying, it didn't change. In order to make it change, make it possible to fit to auto width, you need to select this option. And similarly, if at all you want to prevent the cell formatting on update, you need to check this option to prevent cell formatting. Okay, suppose that I format these cells. Okay, and I select this yellow color. Now what I'll do is I'll go to the order sheet. Here we made some errors, right? Let us change that. I'll change with some random values, right? No, now no more errors. No more errors now. I have this. No more errors now. I'll get back to the sheet. Okay. Now I'll right click, refresh. Now you see the values are appearing, but the format is also preserved. The reason why format is preserved, because the preserve cell formatting is checked on. If we don't have that formatting checked on, now let us do one thing. I'll go back to the same sheet. I'll I'll change the values. Okay. I'll change these values. I'll get back to the same sheet. Okay. Okay, wait. I'll again, select it. Again, go to the order sheet, change the value to some 100 or something. I'll update it. I'll go to the sheet. Here, you know, if I right click and refresh, you could see that format is not preserved. The reason why it is not preserved is in pivot table options, this is unchecked. So that is how it impacts. You have to understand that how it is causing the impact, and what do we need based on the updates. Moving ahead, we have something called totals and filters. If you want to show the grand totals in rows and columns, you could check this. Of course, I want for rows. I don't want for columns. Here you could see that something allow multiple filters per field. Of course, I want to filter based upon the field, and use custom list for sorting. I want it. Moving ahead, display. Suppose that you don't want to display these buttons, where I hope you could see here. If I scroll to the left, you could see these buttons, right? These buttons. If I don't want to, showcase it, I'll go to display, uncheck that, just click OK. Now you see buttons has disappeared. Again, getting back to that display, you can check that to show that. You see something called show contextual tooltips. Okay, if I hover over here, you see this tooltip. Just like in Power BI, we have this tooltip here, where it shows the relevant information when we hover. Okay, if at all I don't want the tooltip, I'll go back to pivot table options. I'll go to display. I'll uncheck that, and it will not show any tooltips. Now I want it, so I am just checking it. Display field captions and filter drop downs. If I uncheck that, click OK. You see all the field captions and drop downs are disappeared. I'll right click pivot table options, go to there, check that for that. This classic pivot table layout I have shown you in the beginning, right? The classic pivot table layout. Again, I'll show you. Suppose that I'll just make another in pivot table for this existing worksheet here. I'll click OK. Okay, this is the new model, but if at all I want the classic one, I'll go to display. I'll check this, click OK. Now you see this. This is the classic one, older one, where it will help you drag and drop the fields respectively. Okay. Moving ahead, what we have is few options like, I'll right click pivot table options. We have something called as okay, we can sort it based on the field list. It is very easy to understand. In printing, suppose that you don't want to print expand and collapse buttons here, which is visible, you can uncheck it. If you want to repeat row labels, the row labels which you have, if you want to repeat for each page, you can check it. If you want to set print titles, the titles which appear on the top, you can set it. Otherwise you can uncheck if you want. Moving ahead, I have explained about this number of items a while ago. Save source data with file. With the file, the save. If you want to save the source data, you need to check it. Enable show details. If I unselect it, click OK. What happens is, if I I'll show you what happens here. I'll first check it. Okay, and I'll click OK. If I just suppose that I want to understand in 2014, based on the office supplies, I have this value. I want to view the data which supports this total. if I double click on that, it will give me all the entire data for 2014 for the office supplies. If I select this sales column, you could see the same total. Okay, this is the total where it drills down into the data of respective sheet, and it will show the data in a new sheet. So that is where it drills down. If I want to stop the drill down, go to data, you uncheck that. If I click OK, no, you press multiple times, it won't show that we can't. It will show that we can't change the part of pivot table. Okay, and moving ahead, here we have something called as refresh data when opening file. When you are suppose that your manager tells that, okay, yesterday new data is updated, but I don't want to show that data. I want to show only the previous data. If you uncheck this, it will show the previous data until unless you refresh. Okay, if you refresh, if you check it, the new data would be updated and you can't retain the previous data. And I hope this retain items was understandable. And alt text is something that, suppose that you want to change the company in future, or else you want to send this pivot table sheet to someone where they need detailed explanation of this table. You can mention some detailed information. This is detailed information of pivot table. You can just click OK. So whenever you want to view the data about the table, what they'll do, they'll go to pivot table, access the data, right? It will be saved there only, it won't go anywhere. So these are few important pivot table options where you need to you must need to learn. I have just few things left. I'll wrap it up in 5 minutes.
Everybody with us so far, or some people have gone to sleep already? Anybody that has gone to sleep? Yes, say yes. Okay, I believe it's a no. So, on, please continue.
Yes, sir. I'll just take 5 minutes. I don't want
Sure.
to. Okay. Now I'll just change this pivot table a little to make you understand very few things. What I'll do, I'll remove all unnecessary things which I don't want. Sorry, why is this not removed? Getting okay. I have this small pivot table, right? Based upon the years and based upon the segment, I have the relevant data, right? I can just ignore this consumer. Now, okay. For better understanding, let us make another pivot table. Insert pivot table, just new worksheet, very clean slate. What I'll do is bring in the subcategory into rows, sales into the values, right? We have the subcategories and sales. I hope it is visible. Let us bring this sales again. Let us bring this sales again. Now you see that now in this, why I brought multiple, this sales multiple times is, now I don't want sum of sales here. Now I want average. What I'll do is I'll right click, go to field value settings. You know this already, but it is quick revision for you. But just click on average, click OK. Now this is my average sales for the respective subcategories. Similarly, if I want to count the number of orders, I'll just right click, field value settings, just click on count. You click OK. It is my count of orders with respect to those subcategories. You see total number of rows in the data set is 9994. It is appearing over here. Okay, now you can change the headings. I can change just to average. Okay, now if you want, you can just double click on that. You'll get directly to the value field settings. Okay, suppose that my manager comes and asks me, Pavan, I want the sales with respect to the previous month. I want to see what is the variance of it, what is the difference of it. Okay, I can just quickly view it, but I can't view it directly. What I'll do is I'll just click on that, show values as. Here there are multiple calculations. Okay, Now, if I little scroll down, there is something called difference from, and there is something called base item here. There are many base items based on which you can, pivot it. But here I'll click on previous and just click OK. Okay. So here you could see that instead of row labels in subcategory in row labels, what I'll do is I'll bring month, because month makes sense comparing to the previous pivoting. Here I'll just remove the field of years, remove the field of this one. Now you could see that. Okay, I'll just double click on that. I'll show values as. Now I have something called as months. I'll just click on previous, click OK. Now you see this. I have the difference of current month minus previous sales. It is very useful for me, and I would like to see what is the impact of it, and I would like to custom some number format for this. I'll just double click on this number format, click on number. You select this last option. In order to showcase it better, you can reduce the decimal you want, comma separator if you want. I don't want it. I'll just click OK, click OK. You see this? I can quickly identify whether my current month sales has increased or decreased, and how much it has increased and how much it has decreased. Very useful, right? Quick and fast formatting. And you can just change the number like variance or anything difference. Here I'll show one more thing. Suppose that you want to view the cumulative total or running total. What you can do is, again we shall go to the same formatting, the value field settings, show values as. Here there is something called as running total in. I'll just select that months. You just click on months and just click OK. You see this, there is running total where it is, for every month it will accumulate the total of previous months and bring the respective value. Here you could see this, total. Okay, I'll highlight this. You see this total, it is, adding the totals for it. So you have to, use the pivot tables in such a way where it could help your manager to view the necessary data by formatting it, by aggregating it, by making charts, making connections, making possible changes with respect to pivot table options. Okay, these things would definitely be useful for your interview if you are a fresher. These things they'll give, even if they'll give you assignments, you'll be able to easily do it if you know these basic things. And like, to learn advanced things, please try to explore more. There are multiple options in Excel, right? Excel is an ocean to learn. So please explore when you find some free time. Thank you for patiently listening for 2 hours. And this is all from my side for today. Thank you. Have a nice day.